Welcome to Something Positive for Positive People. I'm Courtney Brain. Something Positive for Positive People is a podcast where I speak with people living with or affected by sexually transmitted infections. Today I have Clarice with me. Clarice, how old are you?
I am 30 years old.
You're 30 years old. You live in San Diego. You are a Caucasian female.
I am a Caucasian female.
And are you, what's your career field? That's the one thing I didn't ask.
I'm a life coach, so right now I focus primarily on empowering women.
Oh, okay. What's the name of your company?
Uh, the name of my company is Life Coaching with Clarice Connolly,
Mm-hmm.
and my website's empoweringwomen.coach.
Okay. Do you only work with women?
No, I found that women are more open to being supported, and they're more likely to get online and research who's in the neighborhood, who's in the area. So I definitely started as kind of my marketing and how to get out there. And through referrals, I've worked with a lot of men.
Oh,
So I
really?
think that it's just in my experience, it's much easier to approach a woman and talk about hey, are you open to coaching? Than a
Mm-hmm.
male who's kind of no, I don't need that. But I've coached a lot of men as well.
Okay. What kind of, I mean, what exactly does coaching entail? Does it entail something similar to what therapy does, where you, because when you say life coach, I kind of just imagine uh, someone tells you, you give them activities to help them sort through their goals, and then they check in with you and you hold them accountable for them.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really cool. That's kind of spot on. I really like to distinguish the difference because oftentimes people are like, oh, life coach. They either roll their eyes or oh, I don't need one because they're already on the defense.
Mm-hmm.
Or they're just kind of oh, what is it? And it's really important to clarify. There's a consultant. You hire a consultant because they're trying to advise you. They know what's best. They've done what you've done, and they know how to do it better because they're where you want to be, right? Then there's the therapist. I have a therapist. I work with them. We just talk. It's like talk therapy, where you get to talk out your feelings, talk about what's happening, and they've gone through a lot of education. They have a very elite degree. I mean, it's 8 years, I think. And there's multiple forms of therapy, but they kind of dabble in the past, in my experience, right? The one I'm working with, so I can only vouch for that. They dabble in the past, and we look about what's happened. And coaching is kind of in this realm of cool, we touch in the past, we don't spend much time there, but we look at where you're at now and actually where you want to be. And it's really bridging that gap to actually get you there. And along the way, you get to see the thought patterns that are disempowering, that get in the way. You get to see who you show up as when you are faced with circumstances, what your survival mechanism automatically does to keep you safe. And it's about rewiring some of those disempowered beliefs or paradigms that probably got handed down by your parents, or society has inflicted on top of you that this is how you should be, or you've just made up along the way due to a life incident at a young age that I need to be perfect, and how that shows up everywhere, because how you do one thing is actually how you do everything. And so you really get to kind of experience this self-guided realization. And from that, yeah, like you said, we get to put in practices that you get to try every week, and it gets to create this accountability and the structure so that you can have long-term transformation.
So
It's not just this quick fix program.
your job is to get people to forget a lot of things or unlearn a lot of things that they've been programmed to do just out of habit or
Yeah.
just behaviors that they want to change.
Yeah, and it's not about so much forgetting, it's really accepting and forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
Accepting how it's gone, accepting who you've been, and forgiving, the outside influences, or forgiving yourself, and really accessing such a deeper level of understanding of yourself.
Yeah. Did you have a life coach?
I did,
Okay.
actually. This is kind of how all of this started. I got diagnosed. I got diagnosed with herpes,
Type 2, right?
and type 2,
Mm-hmm.
and I just was devastated. I was completely beside myself. Um, it really, my thought pattern and my belief system then was that I was broken and I wasn't enough. And it was I got diagnosed, and it was yep, see, here's proof. Here's the proof that I'm broken, and
How,
I'm definitely not enough.
how
I'm no
long
longer
have
the full
you
package.
how long have you been diagnosed?
It's so funny. I was just trying to look through my journal, because my
Uh-huh.
journal's been my lifesaver for my whole life, and I think that it's been 6 years now.
Okay. So what was going on around the time you were diagnosed?
Um, so the time, it's like I got my first outbreak probably in about, let's just say January, and I was with a significant other. Like I was in a committed relationship. And when I first got it, for me, mine happens like in the unusual place. Mine's probably about 6 inches below my belly button. So it's like not all up in there. It's just kind of like chills in my bush area, right? Like it's like when I first got it, I was like, oh, this is a weird ingrown hair. But you had that like pit in the bottom of your stomach that's like, oof, I've never seen an ingrown hair like that before. It was like no bigger than a eraser, like on a pencil. And I just had one mark, and I was like, you know what? Like out of sight, out of mind. Like I just plastered some like Band-Aids on it for like a week straight, or I think it was like 2 weeks because they last forever the first time. So like super in denial. I was like, he's committed, he loves me. Like, nah, it couldn't be that, right? And then I ended up breaking up with him. I was having a really stressful time at work. Everything just like, we broke up, and it was like building my whole bedroom set by myself, and not eating and not making time to eat, and just not sleeping well, and just like being alone in San Diego because I just moved there. And then I had my second outbreak, and I think this was about October, and it was just like, man, there was no, like, it was very clear that it was herpes. And I went and I actually got it checked out. They like swabbed it, and it was just like, yep. And that's just when I just crumbled. Like that was like the stress of the position I was in as an office manager, the stress of like being alone in a city and being a codependent and like not knowing how to be single, feeling like nobody was going to want me because I'm now infected and walking piece of shit. Like I'm no longer the whole package. Like I think I believed that a lot of who I was my looks and like what I had to offer aesthetically. I'm not saying like I'm a drop dead gorgeous model, but it was just like, yeah, I got a nice smile and I got a great body. But like this was like it was so hard for me. And then your original question was like, yeah, how did I meet a coach, or did I get a coach? I was lost. Like I was just so miserable. I couldn't find people to talk to about it. I think the first person I told was my mom. I was like, well, my mom can't judge me, right? Like I'm her kid. She can't like abandon me because I have herpes. And that was really cool. Like that was like, mom, like I just cried the whole time, and she's just like, what's going on? What's going on? And I told her, and she's like, Clarice, like, you don't remember as a kid, like I wouldn't let you touch my leg, or I wouldn't let you, or like I couldn't eat peanuts and all this stuff. And she's like, I have it too. And I just was like, oh my God, like it just felt like such a relief of like, man, like my biggest fear is like letting down my mom, or letting my parents down, that I'm this failure of a daughter, and
Yeah.
here
Would
was my
you
mom, like I got it.
would you have looked at her any different had you not had herpes? Like had your mom come to you and been like, "Hey, well, remember those times where you were a kid and I would not let you touch my leg, or I wouldn't kiss you or be around you. That's because I have herpes." Do you think that the fact that you were diagnosed with herpes affects how you received that messaging?
I think that, I think that I knew it, or I saw it as a kid but didn't know what it was. And I think that I like didn't put anything to it. Like I don't think that I attached anything of that. But I do remember like when I first got it, and the first time I was rejected, I remember um, like one of I think I was a freshman and he was a senior, approached me, and everybody knew, like there was gossip on the town that he'd been diagnosed with herpes. And I remember being like, ooh, don't talk to me if you got that. Like I'm not trying to get involved in that. Like I specifically remember like how scared I was and like how infected I treated him. And then to be rejected for the first time, I was like, oof, that hurts. Like
Yeah.
that sucks.
So it's not possible that you may have gotten it from your mother, or you may have gotten it as a child?
That was the first thing that I told my mom. I was like, man, don't they test for that? Like, don't you like know that that's, where you get it from? Or could I have possibly gotten it from you? And I think for me that's what's really hard. Is like I know that she doesn't get it in her like genital areas per se. And then you want to go back to like, what are the statistics? What's the logic? Like, how do the doctors say that you actually get it? I spent a long time, like, my ex gave it to me, and he's the culprit. And it's like, well, one statistic says that you can have it your whole life and never have an outbreak, and then the other statistic says that it's like 2 weeks after transmitting it, then you get it, or you have your first outbreak. There were some signs in that relationship that he, could have been a potential carrier because I found, a pill bottle with Valtrex on it, and then there was the conversation of like, oh, this is for something else, and it's like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, I want to benefit and I want to believe him, and, I'm not on here to like bash him or, point him out to be the liar or whatever. It's like, I had to let that go. Like, pointing a finger and finding blame was like the first thing that I had to let go of. Like, it just is. I have it. Pointing a finger, ruining someone else's life, that's not actually going to support me in moving through like this diagnosis. And so, I think one of the things that was really upsetting for me was I didn't have a place to go. Like, I wanted someone to talk to about it. I wanted to normalize that I wasn't the only woman in San Diego suffering from, being a diagnosis, a life-altering change. And it was really sad. I mean, San Diego, they gave me the statistics, was like 3 out of 5 people, right? I can't vouch that that's real at this point, but it's like, well, if everyone has it, then where are the people at? Like, where's everybody at?
We're hiding.
Right, like, come out to hide, like, stop hiding. And I finally found this support group, like, thank you, Meetup, for God's sakes. And it was like the first and third Thursday of the month, and I went, and it was like 3 people the first Thursday, 2 people the second Thursday, and I just was like, man, like, how is nobody coming? I mean, like, I was such a train wreck because I definitely, like, didn't know how to talk about it. I couldn't even say the H word, and they welcomed me with such open arms. And, I went there for the first, like, 6 months of really, like, being able to talk about it. Because for the first year, I was like, don't touch me, don't look at me. I'm not even thinking about a relationship. I don't even deserve it. I got lost in my work. Like, nope, I'm good. And, in that support group, it was like I met a gentleman that was like, girl, like, I got some personal development tickets to the seminar. Like, do you want to go? And I just was like, yeah, like,
That's a
please.
hell of a first date.
Right? Oh, God. I mean, not, oh, God. I wasn't attracted to him, but I think that it was just like he just saw how down and out I was. Like, I just was really struggling to pull myself up by my bootstraps. And I went to this conference, and I saw this gentleman that had this air about him. Like, it wasn't like, oh, you're sexy, I want to be with you. Like, it was just like, whoa, he radiated positivity, and there was this, like, confidence that I, like, forgot that I used to have, and I lost because now I'm like, ooh. But, and then, yeah, just, like, approaching him and just being like, I don't know what you do for a living. I don't know how you got to be, like, who you are, but, like, how do I do that? Like, how do I, like, I need,
Whatever you're pouring out, I need you to pour me some of that.
Right. And so, yeah, I definitely had a money thing. Like, I couldn't afford coaching, but I just was like, if I don't say yes to this, then life's predictably going to stay the way that it's going. And, he supported me in seeing that. And so we worked together. And then it was literally like 3 months in that I was like, you know what? This is actually the career, like the job. Like, the reason that I got herpes is to support people. Like, to support people in having the support they'd never had or thought that wasn't possible, or to, like, support people in seeing that they're way more than their occupation or their status or the labels that they carry, to support people in just seeing that, like, it only takes having one person believe in you to, like, actually believe in yourself and start to build the dreams and the empire that you're really, like, put on this earth to do.
Yeah, I understand that. And one thing that you said a lot there, but one thing that I wanted to highlight was the fact that you said this is what you were meant to do. Had it not been for herpes, do you feel like you wouldn't have discovered that?
No, it's crazy. I'm in my 3rd year as a coach, and it's really, like, I've come from a dysfunctional family. My parents, really working with substance abuse and, like, as their coping mechanisms, and it's like, I've always just been this enormous hearted person. Like, I've always just, like, cared and wanted to be of service, and, back then I was just, like, trying to fix my friends and save my parents' marriage, and that doesn't work. No one needs
No.
fixing. Nothing needs saved, right? And I think that it's just like, as a waitress, like I worked my way through college and, put food on my parents' table and helped my parents with the bills. And it's like, Pittsburgh wasn't fulfilling, so I moved to California. And it was like Sacramento wasn't doing it, so I moved to San Diego. It was like this waitressing job wasn't doing it, this wasn't doing it, like, and I moved careers. So it's like I could have kept hopping probably for the rest of my life, trying to find that one thing that would have actually like fulfilled me or felt like my purpose or felt like why I was put on this earth. But it wasn't until recently, right? Like it wasn't until maybe 6 months, 9 months ago that I realized that I had to turn to like a higher power. Like I was trying to take on the world by myself. Like one person trying to make a difference in the world, like just doesn't actually happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I do a lot of work inside of this support group called Adult Children of Alcoholics. It was once like Adult Children of Dysfunctional Families. But I got to see that it's like when I turn over and I let go of control, and I let go of needing to be hyper responsible and being hyper vigilant. Like if I turn that over to a God, the spirit, the universe, like whatever my higher power is, it like relieves this pressure that I'm like a one-man army and I have to do everything.
Yeah.
And it's like I got to see that like the reason I turned my back on God, my higher power, like the universe, is because it was like I got herpes and I was like, God, what the fuck? Like, I didn't ask for this.
How could you do this? Like, what's this, a joke?
I know, like what? I was in a committed relationship. Come on.
Yeah.
And like it was like only when I let God back in and I forgave and I accepted like this is it, that I got to see like the gift that like, wow, God gave me this to do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much in the world that's like corrupt, and I mean the shame and the stigma, the like, hiding. Like I had to reclaim that piece of me for myself to actually see that's the reason, And it doesn't have to be, right? Like you can do whatever you want with it. Everybody can get it, and they can, just instill their faith in themselves or instill their love in their relationship, and that's great. Like I'm not saying that it's like get herpes and then go do something about it. But for me, like I felt the calling. Like I feel like in my coming out, my disclosing and being public, it's like I want to be that beacon.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be that beacon for hope, that someone can see that it doesn't have to be so life damaging. Like it doesn't have to be so detrimental or so significant or like, you know what I mean? Like I suffered in silence for years.
The silence is where we run into a lot of issues, because not to say that that's the only issue that we run into, but oftentimes what I tend to notice in a lot of the online support groups is no one really wants to point the finger at themselves when they have issues. They point it at herpes. It's, oh, this person rejected me because I have herpes. No one's going to be with me because I have herpes. And you know this through life coaching, through being coached and coaching others, is that you have to accept yourself first.
Right.
So granted, you may have herpes. There may or may not even be a reason that you have herpes to do anything with going forward.
Right.
But I viewed it a number of ways. One specifically is as a speed bump. Like I was living life one way, and it was a reason for me to stop living my life the way that I was living. It was a reason for me to reevaluate things and just go, okay, what's happening here? What am I doing? And it was never about, oh, this person rejected me because I have herpes. In hindsight, at the point in time, it was like the worst thing ever. It was, oh, because I have herpes, no one's going to want to be with me.
Yeah.
Then it just became, looking back on it now, like it's almost comical to look at that person that I was versus who I am now and see that it was all these other things that I had going on. I was indecisive. I didn't have my shit together. I was in no way, shape, or form actually getting my shit together. And a lot of other things had such a higher priority for me than working on myself. So I did a lot of the finger blaming, the herpes, until it was like, okay, it's not necessarily herpes. It's got to be something that I'm doing. And that just takes like you said, it was someone to spark something within you, the life coach that you met, in order for you to become a life coach. For me, it was someone first really exposing me to the idea that I had a choice in how I behaved. And I took a moment to sit down and really evaluate my behaviors and go, oh, okay, I don't like these things about myself. I can change. And herpes wasn't even relevant to that, other than the fact that that was what I held on so tightly to. So I can relate to everything that you're saying, and even when we talked before, like I'm biting my tongue the whole time you're talking, not to jump in and be like, "Oh my God, yeah, me too."
Yeah, yeah, and that's a thing too that I think that drives me or like connects me to women is like, man, my parents at such a young age fed into me the like, you better find someone, to get married. You better find a good man. You better find a man that has money. Like, you better find a man that takes care of you. Like, it is like at a young age, like as a teenager, I'm already like, okay, who's the one? Like, which one of you are going to be the one? Like, and so society or our parents, right? Like we're so conditioned that like we have to find our better half, that we have to find the one.
Better
And
half, yeah.
and it's like when I got diagnosed, it was like, how am I ever gonna find that one now, right?
Yeah.
And I know I'm not alone because there's also the stigma of like when you hit 30, and if you're ticking time clock, 30 is like the end all be all. But it was crazy because then I'm like how am I gonna find that one? And now I'm like I don't even want to because the rejection's so intense or so deep, and it's like I think like you said, I love that piece of like what if the herpes is actually the speed bump to have you realize like you are the one that you have to find,
Yeah.
right? Like we're so externally motivated to find
Mm-hmm.
that killer job, to find that banging car, like to
Yes.
find that, you know what I mean? That title, that, arm candy, that, right? Like, and it's like, what if this is actually like the thing that you need to help you realize like, oh, maybe I need to find me. Like maybe I
Mm-hmm.
need to turn inward and know who I am outside of getting these material possessions to
Yeah.
feel fulfilled or
And
to feel like I'm proving someone or to have worth.
fortunately for us, well, fortunately for me, I can't speak for everyone, but I'm very fortunate to, if this is what I'm supposed to be doing, have it have been herpes that led me to finding myself or finding some sort of purpose or what it is that I needed to be doing, because I listen to a lot of successful people, and they've had like a lot of tragedy. I like to think I had a pretty easygoing childhood, making it through high school and college. I got to do a lot of what I wanted. And it's gotten me to the point where I am now. I've gotten to travel, I've lived other places, and I'm very fortunate for it to have just been herpes, because in a lot of cases it could be a car accident, it could be the loss of a friend or someone close to you that makes you that speed bump can come in the shape of a lot of different things, and for it to have just been an occasional tingle or itch and going through some rejections and having to struggle with a little bit of acceptance, like I'm very grateful for this at this point. And I know not everyone can say this, but it's a matter of sitting down, taking a moment to take the inventory of your life, looking at all of your past experiences that have led you to this point, and taking that inventory to see what you can take from those experiences in order to move forward. Like, what can you do now with everything that you've collected over time in order to make a better future for not only yourself, but to help people around you and be of service, just like you said.
Right, absolutely. And I really love that piece too, because what stands out for me, I remember having a conversation that was huge about like, there's a gift in our compulsions. Like, if your compulsion is to have one night stands or to like sleep around or to like, whatever that is, right? Like to find love outside of yourself. It's like when that gets like pulled away from you, that rug gets pulled out from under you, you're actually like, what do you turn to do? And it's funny because as humans and creatures of habits, you know, we find something else to fill that void, and it's like so easy to turn to alcohol and just like numb all the pain with that, or turn to other substances to really help alleviate with the anxiety. But it's like in reaching out for support, support groups, or hidden Facebook groups, or reaching out to a therapist or having a coach, you get to see that there's other ways to like cope and to like heal yourself, and other ways to really come back to what is another healthier way that you can soothe yourself, that you can
Yes.
be there for you. If you're out really searching for love in one night stands, like how can you show yourself that love that you're actually like so deeply yearning for?
Hmm. And we live in a world that makes us believe from an early age that everything we need is outside of us. I mean, granted, we
Yeah.
need
Nice
food,
marketing.
like our bodies, of course, need certain things, but what we really yearn for is something emotionally or spiritually even. And we try and find that by working to make a lot of money so that we can buy all the things that we want, so we can get those prized possessions that are prized to other people, only to get to a point where we acquire those things and they have nowhere near the amount of value to us that they had to that person. And it's just simply because each of us is our own unique collection of experiences. Like we're our own form of expression, and what may be the greatest accomplishment to one person and everyone around me is like, yeah, go do that, you should do that, that's what'll get you to where you want to be and make you get the feeling that you're looking for. That may not even be the case. Like I might want to knit blankets, and that's where I get my satisfaction from, just out of doing something like that. I don't need to have like a Ferrari or anything. Like it's
Hmm.
maybe just that simplicity. But we go through life, and I think that we chase all of the external needs of gratification, the external approvals, so that we can ultimately come to the realization, oh, I don't really need these things. I don't even really want these things. Like that's how we come to what the meaning of not life in general is, but our meaning of life, by having all of those experiences take place, and then we go on and be like, okay, well, what can I do that means something?
I think that that's the thing. Like we're so. I wish that there's this place of like, if you can if like you listen to this and do anything with this podcast, right? Like, it's just like, what is your life purpose? And like, notice where, are you a person that believes it's handed to you, or you like fall into it? Are you a person that believes that you can create it, right? Like, because you can. And it's something that you can go have a conversation with your friends and really provoke some thought. But it's like, when you can identify, like, my life purpose is love, my life purpose is connection, my life purpose is peace on earth, right? Like, you can actually sit and look at your life in this way of like, oh yeah, this is a contribution to being like peace on earth. This thing that I do right here, like, I'm bringing peace to people's lives
Yeah.
just by making them smile every day. And you just feel this sense of purpose. Like, it feels so much more fulfilling than my life purpose is to make $1 million. Cool,
Mm-hmm.
because then when you don't, you're beating yourself up, because then you're like, wow, okay, I'm failing. And like, you start to like attach this, like, your worth is attached to your results.
Mm-hmm.
And that's awful. Like, that doesn't make anyone feel good. And
Mm-hmm.
it's all a choice. Like, I love what you said when we first started. Everything is a choice. Like, will you choose an empowered one, or will you choose a disempowered one?
Yeah, and making that choice isn't always that easy, because
Nope.
it, for a lot of people, takes being around the right people. We naturally are products of our environment, and we choose to operate based on the principles, values, beliefs that we grew up with and learned from that environment, because it's how we survive. And we don't necessarily know that we have a choice until we change our environments, or until we find
Yes.
out from other one, oh, there is another choice. Like we can look at things very one dimensional, and then have something just completely blindside us and have us look at another direction, be like, oh shit, like let me get back to what I was looking at before, but that looks nice, I'm going to turn my head back this way. And you constantly want to peek over, and the things that you had tunnel vision on, all of a sudden disinterest you, or they aren't as important to you. They lose some of their value, or maybe they still have the same value, but you begin to recognize the kind of value that they have, only to, shift your focus on that direction that you were sent when you were blindsided. And for you and I, being blindsided by herpes was one of the things that made us begin to look at other things. Like that shit is blinding, like blindsiding. And it hurts. When you get that diagnosis, you get that, first off, you go into denial. Maybe you thought it was a hair bump initially, and
So
then
much so.
there's time passing. You're like, oh, I hope this isn't herpes, and you're operating out of this place of fear. And then when you find out it's herpes and you know it for a fact, you have a choice on how you're going to deal with it. And now your decisions, whether it be a conscious level or subconscious level, become based on the fact that you have herpes. Like, do I want to move forward with this person Do I want to even date? Like, where am I going to put my energy? Am I going to avoid the fact that I have herpes and just not date altogether? Or am I going to seek out other people with herpes? There are so many choices that
Yeah.
become options or become available to us once we recognize that we have to be uh, thrown into that position to be able to recognize other choices. Like a lot of people don't listen to or receive things until they're ready to receive them.
No,
And
absolutely.
without that blindsiding, like someone could have told me, "Hey, you're going to start a podcast." I'd be like, "Bullshit, no, I'm not." And you're going to talk about herpes. I'm like, "What the fuck do I need to talk about herpes for? Excuse me, who are you, sir?" So
Yeah.
that's just, and I like talking to you about this kind of stuff because I don't get to talk about it often. Whenever I have guests on, it's been very well lately at least, and I think that that's part of where all my ramblings coming from is because it's been very like not experience based necessarily. It's been more facts and statistics and who has herpes, like the medical professionals that I've had
Right.
on. I love them. I appreciate their time, but like I think I've been holding this in
Thoughts.
for a while.
Yeah. And I really want to like underline a piece that you said that that has been a lot about my experience. Um, I definitely I definitely had this piece of me growing up where I felt like I was the dreamer in a house full of realists. And then it's like I started exploring outside of my house and was like, oh, it's a city full of realists. Got it. And like no one got me. Like no one saw like, hey, I'm getting out of here. Like I'm graduating college and I'm gone. Like I'm going to the East Coast, like or West Coast, right? Um, and just so many people were like, why? Why would you do that? Why would you leave everyone you know and love? Like, what? Who does that? It just wasn't, people didn't do it. They didn't get it. Like, I never had that support, right? So I really, warned and told people for years. And then when the time came, everyone's like, whoa, you're really doing it? It's like, dude, I've been telling you forever. And it's that kind of courage. Like, it's that kind of like, find something you believe in and chase it. Like, go after it. And I don't know where I learned this from, honestly. Like, and I really know that I'm one of a kind in this regard, but I want people to see, like, you don't need someone to believe in you. Like, you don't need your parents to tell you, yeah, go ahead to do it. Just do it. Like, if your friends all are satisfied with, staying in the city that you grew up in and doing what everybody else has been doing, like, cool. Doesn't mean that you need to, right? Like, there's this piece that's you're yearning for. That I had this, like, internal itch that was like, I'm not meant to stay here. There's such a bigger world. Like, I just need to do it. And if I fail, like, I'll come back. And it's like everyone just selfishly wanted me to stay home. Like, everyone, had their own opinions of how I would fail. Or they projected, like, it's so expensive there. Like, you're not going to make it, right? It's cool. Like, that's theirs. Like, my dream, my vision was to not stay in the city I grew up in. Like, not to stay in Pittsburgh. And
I have a
it's the
lot of
same.
friends who like left Pittsburgh, or a couple of my friends like were like, "Yeah, we want to leave Pittsburgh," and moved out. Actually, a couple of them moved to San Diego.
Yeah, maybe it's in the pipe dreams. They just like smoke it in, while you're sleeping, and some people get it, some people don't. But it was really like, you know, I was more aware than maybe most people at such a young age. But it was like if I'm gonna live only one life and I only have one, why would I not have it all? Like, why would I not want to live in the place of my dreams? Like, why would I not, right? And so, like, the underlying point is just kind of like, just because none of your friends are doing it, like, doesn't mean that you need to stop thinking about that one thing that, like, sets your heart on fire. Like, just because you don't know one person, like, I never had a female role model. I love my mom. She just didn't choose a life that I would choose. Like, I didn't have someone that I aspired to be. Like, I got to make that up. So it's like, if you don't have that role model, like, be that role model. If you don't have that example, like, set the example. If you don't have a group of friends that support you in dreaming big, like, find that set of friends.
Hmm.
Like, create that set of friends. Like, get on Meetup, get on Facebook, start talking about it. Like, going out and just being like, hey, I want to create a group of men that want to open their own businesses. And then you get to see, like, when you find fellow dreamers,
Yeah.
fellow enthusiasts, that you can, like, build off of each other's energy
Yeah.
instead of, like, trying to drag people, uphill with one piece of string to get to see the top where you're
Yeah.
like, no, this is the vision I have. See, get it? Like, that was the biggest gift for me is I go, let my parents off the hook. Like, my parents just got to be my parents. when I stopped expecting them to understand me. And
Can you
like
repeat
that
that?
creates so much freedom.
Can you repeat that statement?
I got to create a new relationship with my parents when I let go of the expectation that they needed to understand me. And I said it so much eloquently the first time, but
It's
like
okay.
I then got to create the relationship that I'd always dreamt of and imagined possible with the two of them.
I just thought it
And I
was
just
very
got them to be my
important.
parents.
I just thought it was important to reiterate because of what you said. Like you let go of the expectation of your parents, you know, doing what you wanted them to do. And in being able to let that go, I think that that freed up any harboring or building of resentment that could have taken place when they disappointed you or when they didn't respond in the way that you wanted them to respond. So being able to let go just kind of freed you up, not only from the expectation of maybe they'll give you their approval or be excited for you, or maybe they won't. But you were able to go off and do your own thing without that expectation, and you didn't put anything on them that would give them any reason to harbor resentment or put up any resistance to what it is that you were doing. And they were just they were free to observe because you didn't put anything on them,
Right.
and they were, like you said, able to just be your parents.
Dude, that healing my wound or healing my relationship with my parents has been life altering.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's crazy because I want to be like herpes is that catalyst, but it ultimately is.
Oh, I
Like,
wanted to see how long we would go before we brought up herpes at all again, because all of this that we're talking about, like you can listen to this and completely remove herpes out of it, and
right?
you have life lessons
Right.
out of this.
Absolutely.
But
And like I think that like the wildest thing on this journey with herpes, or the wildest thing on my journey at all with mending my relationship to my parents, is, like I said, the journey of realizing like I turned my back on God and that I can't do life without a higher power. I can, but it's a lot of work. And like, being so East Coast and, wound tight and needing to control and manage everything. And everyone can say that in their own way, no matter what part of the world they're from. But I grew up, right? Like I grew up in this place where, you know, my father's priorities were getting home from work, drinking, and watching a good sport, game, movie, whatever. And as a little kid, you don't know any better. It's like, Dad, look at me, I did this. No, I'm busy. Like, I'll wait till commercial, Dad, look, come play with me. Nope, I'm busy watching, right? Like, and there's no shame. There's no, like, knocking on my dad. He just was a human being doing the best that he could, the best he knew how. Like, his passion is sports. Like, God bless him, love him. But as a kid, like, you create this thing that you don't know any better. It's like, I need to be perfect so my dad will give me attention, or I need to be perfect because love is earned in my mind. Like, I'm 6 years old. You don't say that, but this is the thing that gets created. And I, from a very young age, was like, I have to be perfect. Like, I have to, like, look good, get great grades, earn that job that makes my dad proud, find the person that makes me look good. Like, just perfection was the undercurrent in which I ran my life. And when I got really present to that, it just saddened me, because that story stems from such a young age, and it's really connected to my dad, because your first love, just by science, I think, is just the opposite sex. So like my dad is my first love. And as I've gone through literally 4 years of just coaching and transformation and personal development, I got to see that I was just so afraid of letting my dad down. Like, so afraid of just like his disapproval, or just like the heartbreak of not measuring up to like the standard. And when I brought this conversation to him, I was like, Dad, I really need to talk to you about something. It was like I was 7 years old again. Like, I was so young. Like, I was like, that thing that mom's got, that one that like kind of happens on her leg, that thing, it's like I couldn't say it again. Like, I was just like, like popping right back to this like really young age. And he was like, yeah, dude, what about it? Like, you're freaking me out. What's happening? I was like, I just, I want to have a conversation about it. And I like drew this out because I was so uncomfortable. And it was like, man, I'm really young right now. Like, I know I'm 30, but it was like I was 14 again. And I told him, and I just was like, hey, like, I've literally told mom, everybody close in my family. I've talked to a lot of, majority of all of my friends, close people I know, people on the streets that I talk to. Like I'm out in public just talking about it. I just feel like I want to go public. Like I want to go on Facebook. I want to be this beacon. I want to reach more people so that they can see, like normalize. And he's just like, Clarice, like, can you just tell me what you're talking about? And I was just like, Dad, I have herpes. And I just start crying, and he's just like, okay, and I just was like, oh, like, I just was so afraid to tell you. And he just was like, Clarice, like, you probably got it from your mom. You know, your mom has it, right? You know, like, so, like, I had created so much significance. I had held on to this for 5 years. So much shame. I was so afraid to tell my dad because that is the person who means the most to me on the planet. And he just was like, okay. And he's just like, all you gotta do is take some lysine, you know, trying to like, right, like super dad. It was super cool. And I just was like, oh my God, Dad, I just thought that you would just be so devastated and so let down and think so less of me and totally like disown me or, you know, whatever. And he just was like, Clarice, oh my God, was I that horrible of a human being to you as a kid that you think that like it's unsafe to bring this to me? And I just wept. Like I was just so heartbroken. Like that this story that I was 7 years old and decided I needed to be perfect was the only thing that actually created the biggest barrier between me and my dad.
Yeah. And the only way for that to have been addressed was through telling him that you had herpes. Essentially, this was the only event that took place for you that allowed for you to address that barrier that kept you and your father from being as close as you were. And like, I'm sure that there may have been other sort of issues that were going on in your life as a result of that relationship. But what disassembled or diffused that whole barrier that was set up was the fact that not only did you have herpes, but you were able to tell him you had herpes, and for him to respond to it in such a way that in your mind you could not comprehend him responding the way that he did.
Oh my God, so supportive. I spent my whole life like he's this monster that chooses sports over his daughter, and you know, it's just like he doesn't get me and he doesn't understand. And then to like have him be like, look, I love you, and this is no big deal, and like just so warm and just a safe place to land and supportive and understanding and open. And I just was like, what? Like this is the man I only dreamed of from like 10 years old, and not like, oh, so you were actually probably that exact person the whole time. I just let this thing, this like, I need to be perfect and I let you down, shame,
Yeah.
like come between us. Like it just blew my mind.
It's our own projection. You know, you projected the idea of who your dad was, and that more than likely showed up everywhere else in your life. You know, you may
Right?
have done that with a lot of things or a lot of other people, and the only way to get out of that was to just in reality bring it up and bring up
Yeah, face it.
whatever it was that you were holding on to that made that person the bad guy or who they were.
Right?
So
Absolutely.
in doing
It's,
that, that was the most healing thing for you, was being able to open up and talk to your dad and say, hey, I have this thing that I've been building up, and it's just getting worse and worse, and it's turning into much worse things, and it's hurting me, it's damaging my life. I want to address this now. You brought it up, and then he's like, what?
yeah, you know, and it was crazy because he just was like, why are you telling me this? And I was like, look, I feel the call. Like, I feel the pull forward from my heart to start to be much more public about this. Like, what if I'm meant to share, you know, on podcasts? I did a podcast episode on my own podcast. I want to speak, or, you know, like, it's like, I want to be public about this. And he kind of gave me this, like, well, I don't understand that. And I was like, it's cool. Like, you don't need to. I just was afraid that you're going to sit, you know, go down the bar and run into your buddies, and they're going to be like, oh, saw your daughter's post, like, so sorry that she's got herpes. She was such a beautiful girl, you know, like, and I just was like so concerned that I was like gonna get this on my dad, and he was gonna have to deal with it. I was like, so I just wanted to prepare you, in case that happens or it starts to be like a thing. And he was like, Clarice, I got this, and like that's not gonna be the situation. Like pretty sure, And it's just like, yeah, wow, caretaking. Did a lot of caretaking right there. But that was my fear, right? Like he was just gonna have to like be in the corner, like, oh man, yeah, whoops, like. um, and it just was. I was making it so much more significant and intense than it needed to be, and like dispelling that, like you said, just finally facing it, and just like instead of making that up in between my ears, like just seeing what actually happened, like letting it go and letting that barrier down. And it brought to me this, like, if I can show up in this raw, very, like, open, vulnerable place, like, this is the ugliest piece of my existence, my shadow piece, like, that he would accept me at anything, at any point. And if, like, my dad accepts me, then I don't actually care if anybody does, right? Like, that's my first love, right? Like, my first person, like, my family. And that just was like, wow, like that gave so much space and permission and so
And
much
that's the letting go.
liberation.
You let go of the attachment to the idea that your dad was this horrible person.
Oh yeah,
And
it was just such a gift on so many different levels, like so many different levels. And I would have never experienced it had I not, started talking about it. Like had I not, you know, turn to my best friend and be like, stop settling for all these terrible men. Like you deserve better. At least you don't have herpes like I do. And she's like, but I do. Oh my God, that's why I settle, And then we get to talk, and it's like, girl, stop, right?
yes.
Like this just gets to be another filter. Like it's like
Hmm.
if they say no to that, then like cool, on to the next one.
Yeah, and
And so
it
like,
makes it easier for you to find your person. I was just having a conversation with someone earlier today about this, and it's just they don't like rejection. Nobody likes rejection.
nobody.
But
Can we just like nobody likes rejection? Yeah.
I'm seriously though, like each and every rejection, as cheesy as it is and cliche as it sounds, is leading you in the direction of finding who it is or however many people it is that you're supposed to be with. Like
Right.
one by one, each rejection or each person that comes into your life is teaching you something, and you're
Mm-hmm.
getting something from them that is equipping you for the present so that you're in a position to meet the people you're supposed to meet now who are going to lead you to
Right.
the people you're supposed to meet in the future. And the most simple way to put this is if they reject you, you're not supposed to be with them.
Done.
Yeah, it's simple as
Done.
that.
That's it.
Like
Mm-hmm.
the
Absolutely.
person or people you're supposed to be with either have it or are okay with it.
Yeah, totally. Like not even bat an eyelash. It's really remarkable to see, you know, I've definitely had my fair share of rejections, and I definitely, handled it in my own way. I think for me it was a lot of like, they call it a relationship anorexia. Like this like no desire to be in a relationship whatsoever. And it's like that doesn't serve you, right? But you can choose it. You can empower it. That's great. But I always like think of the movie like Weird Science, and I know it's like super old at this point, but it's like when you keep meeting these people, you can be like, okay, well, I like that facet about her. She's really sweet and charming. Okay, but it didn't work out because she didn't have a backbone, or like, like this next person that's like, oh, she was really, really beautiful, but then there wasn't, a passion to her, right? Like, so you can start to like, but I like the passion. I want someone who's like, not about their looks, but then also, and it's like only do you get to experience that or like understand that that's what you want when you can pick and see like all the things about multiple people, and then you get really, really clear. You're like, yeah, this whole person that I just created, like that's the one.
Hmm.
And you focus on that, you actually manifest that person.
I agree. I agree. Uh, I think that this is a really good place for us to
Let's do
stop.
it.
Did you have anything else that you wanted to leave us with?
I definitely, wish I would have wrote down all of these points, but I just want
You
to
did a great
emphasize.
job. Seriously, you did a great job here.
I'm
Um,
just so passionate about
yeah, you are definitely, and you taught me a few things about life coaching. I mean, I always had an assumption about what life coaches did
Everyone
until
does.
like you meet people and you talk to them, and like I get this genuine, authentic vibe from you that you are who you say you are. And from the conversation, I think that this is very useful. I think that this is going to be useful to people, especially people who are going through, the same experience. I've always thought that a life coach hadn't really gone through anything, but for you, someone being someone who is helping women, and especially helping women who are dealing with the diagnosis of and the things that come with having herpes, especially psychologically, like that's
Yeah.
people need that. People really do need that. And while we can't be all things to everyone, I think that the more people we have out there who are just trying to be something to someone, the better off we all are. Because while you may not be able to help everyone, you're helping someone, and that person may be able to, at some point, be able to help someone.
Right.
And it just,
It's
there's
the
a,
ripple effect. It
yeah,
really,
ripple
really
effect.
is.
I was about to
And
say trinkle.
I think the thing that's like super most like the most important is that we have these hardwired beliefs that we make up in our own mind. And it's really hard to rewire those beliefs with the mind that actually made it. Right? So just like wanting to like sit with that thought and emphasize like the power of support, like the power of connection, the power of conversation, the power of, groups that are also suffering and working through diagnosis and what to do, and that there's so much healing in normalization and so much healing in connection and realizing you're not alone and not having to do it alone.
That's all we need. That's it. Now, how can people find you?
I have a website. It's empoweringwomen.coach. So EMPOWERINGWOMEN.coach. So you can find me there. Shoot me an email. I think it's like contact@empoweringwomen.coach. I have my own podcast, Heart Empowered Women Radio. We just talk about, things like boundaries and what it means to have them, and, whether loving confrontation and what it looks like to do it. So just really deep, like philosophical conversations with women who are empowered in their life, and they're showing up in every different form and way and all across the country.
That's amazing. Well, I thank you, and I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me and use this as your kind of coming out podcast
Thank
story.
you so much for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if there's anything else I can do for you, don't hesitate to reach out. Like I said, I appreciate what you're doing, and we need more people doing this. We need more people who set out to just help someone.
Absolutely. All you can do for me is keep following your heart and keep creating this movement. And it's like, this is profound work. Like, thanks for doing it.
I appreciate that.
Yay.
That
Good.
that
All right, well, you have a great rest of your Tuesday.
I will. Wait, don't go. You look like you're about to hang up.
I wasn't. I was just looking at this notification.
Oh, okay. That concludes this episode of Something Positive for Positive People with Clarice Connolly. If you like this episode, please don't hesitate to put that on a podcast player that you liked it, and then give us a 5-star rating and leave us a review letting us know what you liked about this episode, or if you have any questions or would like to see something different that wasn't in this podcast episode, or even more content from it. Don't hesitate to reach out. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, Tumblr, Reddit at HOnMyChest. Feel free to send me a message, ask me anything, and if you have a question that you'd like to have answered on the podcast, don't hesitate to reach out about that either. Till next time, stay positive.